Hello and welcome to the Women Fantasy Authors YouTube channel. My author that is joining me today is Millie Abecassis, who is a fantasy, sci-fi, horror, and thriller writer. And we're going to be talking about her book, Legacy, Blood, and Bone. And before we do that, Millie, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Janet. So I'm Millie. I'm a French-American writer, like you said, of science fiction, fantasy, horror, thriller. I would say maybe a bit more mystery, but I love thrillers. So maybe one day I will write one, a proper thriller. And so I was born and raised in France. I've been living in California for the past 11 years. And I made the switch to writing in English 5 years ago. And I've been very busy since then. And so, yeah, I'm here today to talk about my debut novel, A Legacy of Blood and Bone. I'm very excited about it. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad that you could come on today. I just finished reading it, and of course, I loved it. And so we're going to start beginning at the beginning of the story where we meet Vinnie Aniton. So please tell us about Vinnie and how she ends up as a tutor in the De Serot household.
So, Vinny, first, before I talk about her, just to give a bit of context for the audience. So, it's set in 1908 in France. And at this time, it's already the Republic, right? The monarchy ended almost 2 centuries ago. Well, there was a bit of back and forth, right? If you know a bit about French history. But at the beginning of the 20th century, it's a republic. Nobility doesn't really mean anything anymore. It's more like on paper. Of course, they still have wealth, but their title don't give them any specific privileges. And that's also a time where you see a lot of people from, I would say, like commoners, who don't come from nobility, but who are really rising through society, like they're, through work, through education, they're reaching like higher level, like a higher class. And so Vinish, that's who she is. She comes from a more modest family. I mean, her dad comes from a modest family, but her dad, like, really is like a self-made man. He went to Paris and started his company, and know he can offer a pretty comfortable life to his daughter and his wife. But Vinny is still, she's still like learning to navigate this upper crust of society because she's not really from it technically, since she's not a noble. And even if her father has a successful company, they're not particularly like very rich or anything. So she went to school, she studied um, to become a teacher, and she just graduated. So very excited, looking for her first job. And she wants to become a private tutor. She doesn't want to work, in high school or, at university. She could, but she's more interested in working with an individual student and at least to get started with her career. So she's really eager to find her first job, and she sees, this offer for a position at the Sterot family. So they live in the suburbs of Paris, and they are from a noble family. And she has heard great things about them. She doesn't know like them personally, but she's heard a bit about them, and she's like, "Oh, that sounds like a great opportunity." So she goes there to apply for the job, and things could be easy for her, right? But they're a bit more complicated by the fact that she is also a clairvoyant. She inherited this gift from her
Yes.
grandfather, right? That allows her to see the past in buildings, kind of like if buildings are forming memories. And the problem is that she doesn't have any control over it because her grandfather, the only person in her family that she knows of that has this same ability, passed away before she was born. Her mother, it's a maternal grandfather, her mother doesn't have it, and she's not very comfortable with it. She doesn't really understand it. So Vinny grew up with those vision, like kind of plaguing her. So for her, it's not a gift. It's more like a curse because just wants to go on with her life, go to this interview to become a teacher, but her gift slash curse decides otherwise because she has no control over it. So that's adding a bit of a challenge for her. She's both trying to, like navigate life as a freshly graduated student, no looking for her first job, also in a more richer family. But she has to also deal with those visions. So that's how it happens. I don't know if you want me to go a bit farther of how things
No,
go, but that's
no. I
yeah.
want to. I want to get to some of the other questions because I
Yes.
love the concept of her being able to read memories because in the buildings because
Yeah.
I do believe that buildings do absorb memories and history. So it's interesting that you picked up on that concept. Okay, further as she gets there and what a job she finds, you're gonna find out what a story this is when you read it. But the patriarch of the Dessereau family has just died, and he's named his daughter as his successor instead of his son. So which is a conflict within the family.
Mm-hmm.
So why was she selected rather than the son? Just was there
Yeah.
something? Yeah, and we need to get through this without giving many spoilers. So go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. When I saw your question, I thought, I have
Yeah,
to
I
make sure
know.
I
So
answer
do
this
your
one without
best.
too much spoiler. So
Yeah.
yeah, so Vinny works for Oberlin, so she gets hired. And so Oberlin is the oldest daughter of the Count of Sterol. And then, yeah, he dies unexpectedly, and she realized that she's been named the heiress and the next countess instead of her younger brother. And of course, that's a big question for her brother, who is obviously very upset with that decision. Nobody in the family really understands why. They have kind of a clue, which is that her father, the Count, was a progressive man for his time. He pushed Oberlin to go study medicine, so she's a physician, which was not very common at the time. Women were allowed to study. They were allowed to study even in Paris, so she could have studied in Paris. She decided to go study in Geneva, but she could have studied in France. But it was still very uncommon, and especially for a noble family.
Yes.
They would usually not really work, especially women. They would just be expected to, still learn like good manners, like be educated. They would still get education, obviously, but they were not expected to like become a physician. So the Count was already a bit progressive for his time. So in that regard, the fact that he selected a woman is not that surprising. But there is still the question of why her and why not the brother, like, is there a reason? And the main reason that at least he explains in his letter to Oberlin, for her, because he wants to make sure that she does not renounce the title, because she could say, like, I don't want to be the countess, I want my brother to be the count. That's what she was ready for. But he wants to make sure she does not do that. So he leaves a letter, and in the letter he explained that because her brother Renan married into another family, which also has some magic abilities,
Right.
he doesn't want him to become the heir because he worries that this other family is actually trying to, take advantage over the Stereo, maybe control their assets, something like that. He doesn't trust
Yeah.
them, and he believes that Renan will not be acting in the best interest of the Stereo, of his own family, and might actually act in the interest of his in-laws.
Right.
And there
Right.
is some additional things
Yes,
that
there's
I'm
more.
not gonna touch on.
It becomes
Yes,
very clear that
yes,
he made a wise choice as the story goes
yes.
on. So let's get a little bit into the magic. The Dessereaux have a very unique magic that they use to benefit the community. So, what is their magic, and how do they use it, and a little bit about how it came into the family.
Yes. So they can use their blood to heal people. Not Don't picture someone like cutting their arm open and bleeding. They don't need to do that. They can literally consume the blood from their own body without bleeding, just like, I don't know, like you use everyday energy, right, from your body, like for your muscles to function. But instead of, that, they can heal people. They have a few other abilities. They can change, like each of them can also choose an animal that they can change into. That's called an affiliation. And they can also foster all sorts of life, like plants and such. But the key element of their blessing, because that's also how they call it, and that's connected to how they got it, allows them to use their own blood to heal people. They can heal themselves too. It doesn't have to be necessarily other people. Of course, it comes at a cost, because the blood does not necessarily regenerate faster than in normal people. So the same way that you cannot donate your blood, every day, you have to wait for it to come back. It's the same for them. They have to be careful about how much they use. and some of their talents are using more blood than others. So, for example, changing into their affiliation takes a lot of blood compared to healing a minor cut, for example. So they have to be very careful with that. And how it came to be and why it's called a blessing. So they believe that's the story in the family. Is it true or not? No, no, it's what they believe. But they believe that it's a blessing from God to their ancestors. So they have this ancestor called Saint Réan, who I'm not going to go into her story because I think it's interesting for the reader to discover it. But Saint Réan was the first person in their family to have this blessing, and they believe she got it as a gift from God for, because of good deeds she did, and she needed also to heal people. And then it passed down in the family. And that's what they believe. And that's why they call it a blessing. And the reason I went with that, by the way, is because at first I found it interesting. That's one reason. I found it an interesting idea to mix magic with faith and religion instead of opposing it or making it secret. I had multiple options, and especially since it's taking place at the beginning of the 20th century in France in a noble family, they were Catholic, or if they were not Catholics, they would have been from another religion. But coming from old French nobility, they would be Catholic, very likely. So I wanted to be historically accurate and depict a family from that time. Even if it would not be a big deal for them, they would still be Catholics. They would still have relationship with the church. And I thought, if they have this magic, how does it connect or not with their faith? Does the church know of it or not? Is it opposed or not? So I had multiple options, and I decided to go with this one because I think it's not done very often. And I thought it would be, it's often either like you completely ignore the fact that they would be Catholic and that it might be, an issue or like at least a question of how do they consider this magic power with their faith, or at least with the church, who was still very important in society. Like the separation from church and state in France happened just a few years before the story. It was like 3 years before, 1905. So still very recent, and the church still had a pretty good influence on people's lives, much less so today in today's France.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting. I wanted to explore this idea. And I think a lot of people like that because I didn't want Catholicism to be something good or bad in the story. To me, it's just there. It's there because it's part of their life. And I found it interesting for them to believe that their magic is connected to their faith and not opposed to it or separate from it.
I think it worked. And I thought it was an interesting piece to it, especially that you're mentioning a particular saint, that the family stories that it came from a particular saint. I've never read anything that connected that before. So I actually like that about the story. Okay, we're going to move on to the next big piece, which is the romance. I don't read a lot of romantasy, and I really liked how this developed. I didn't realize when I started reading your book that it was going to be part of the story. So Vinnie realizes when she gets there that she's attracted to Aveline. And what I liked about it is it almost developed gently. I mean, it was not like a really in your face kind of thing. It was sort of woven into the story. And so when you started writing the story, did you know, was the romance part of it, or did that develop as the story unfolded?
No, I knew it would be part of it. It was a conscious decision. And it was also a decision not to make it I would say, like the meat of the story, because like you said, you expected a historical fantasy, which is what it is first. I would not define this book as a romantasy where the romance is like really prevalent, and it's not a romance-driven story. But you're right, it is woven into the story of the family and the magic and the big stakes. It's like this subplot that's always here and that helps reinforce the big stakes that are connected to the family and the magic. And that's also because that's how I like romance when I read. I'm not a big fan of like romantasy or romance. It's not what I read, but I like if there is romance as part of a story that the main plot is not the romance. But I like when romance as a reader yeah, is here to make the main stakes stronger, because no, it's not only about saving the world or whatever, you know, your character is trying to do. It's also being able to be reunited with the person they love, or having this person join their fight or whatever, and then it changed the dynamics of how they approach things. And that's how I also tried to do it in Legacy. Is I wanted the burgeoning relationship. You're right, it's a slow burn, it's slow, it's not like a love at first sight and immediately they fall in love. It's like it's developing slowly, but I wanted it to be part of the character growth, especially for Obeline, because she's dealing with so many responsibilities. She's not
Right.
had time for romance. Like she, in her mind, she's like, I don't have time for that. I'm busy raising my niece as my own daughter. No, I'm the countess. I have a lot of things to do, and I don't have time for love. But it reaches a point that she almost thinks she doesn't even have a right to it, because she's like, I have to do my responsibilities first. But the letter from her father is also this first clue of, actually, you have a right to it, my daughter. You know, I hope you don't forget that. And
Yeah.
through the story, she comes to that realization that her responsibilities and her romantic life don't have to be opposed, they can coexist. How they coexist might not be easy, but she has a right to it. So that's how I wrote this romance. I wanted it to be part of the character growth, and
Yeah.
here to strengthen the bigger stakes of the story.
I loved it. It was a perfect balance for me, and the historical, the historical background. It was all really blended really well, and I liked especially how Abeline came into it later in the story, because, like you said, she's busy raising her niece and dealing with the conflict within the family and all of that. So for me, it was a perfect balance of that. Um, we're going to the story has other families with other magic. Can you
Yes,
just very briefly, we're going to run out of time here in a little bit. Could you
yes,
very briefly tell us about the other two families and the types of magic that they have?
sure.
Or three,
So
yeah.
there are four total, but
Four. Okay.
three that are I would say, the official main ones. So we have the Stero, who have blood magic, a blood blessing, who can heal and change into an animal. We've got the Balmag, who can use their bones to become very strong or insensitive to pain. So their blessing is more based on strength. Then we also have the Montagneux, who can use their flesh. So that's like muscle, fat, even their organs, which, you know, I would not recommend, obviously, but they can use their flesh to control people or things. So think like telekinesis or mind control. So that's obviously a very powerful blessing. And the last one, which does not exist anymore, is actually people who are cursed, not blessed. At least that's how
Mm.
all the three other families see it. The Chambeaux were cursed with skin magic, which allow them to use their skin, which, as you can imagine, is very risky, very dangerous. Like, our skin is a protective layer, very important for our health. Without it, we can get so many different issues. But they can use their skin to absorb the life force of other people and extend
Wow.
their own lifespan, which
Okay.
obviously other people don't like, because they basically can use their magic to kill people and extend their own lives. So that's why they don't exist anymore, because the three other family, there is a whole story about it, banded
Yeah.
together to put an end to them, because they were obviously very dangerous.
So I'm just going to say, so imagine we've got all these kind of families that are connected in certain ways. And there's the son and the daughter, and there's a fight within this family with all this different magic for who's going to have power. So that's all I'm going to say. But it makes for a really, really rich and dramatic story, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, let me share your information so people can see how to contact you. I was interested in your background, especially because you were born in France and studied in France. And I'm wondering if you think that this gives you a different focus for your writing than if you had grown up in the United States.
Yeah, I think it does, definitely. I love, in particular, French folklore. A lot of my stories are fairy tale retellings, and I use Perrault, so the French writer Charles Perrault, a lot as my inspiration. This one is not a fairy tale retelling, but in general, in my writing, that influences me a lot. And of course, the decision to write a historical fantasy, to put the setting in Belle Epoque France. I think it's a mix of being comfortable with that time because I grew up in France. I studied French history. I still had to do a lot of research, obviously, but I'm comfortable with that time. And yeah, I love, writing, reading from all sorts of cultures. And I think, when I wrote this book, I wanted to write something very authentic to me. And being French, obviously, that's where I decided to go. So yeah, it definitely influences my writing. Also, the fact that I can read in French
Yes.
means that I have, access to a lot of literatures that may not be translated in English. And so I think it helps. It's not specific to, being French or reading in French. I think it's the same for everybody who is bilingual or come from another country. We have access to a whole other world of literature and a different way to tell stories because it's not just the
Yes.
language.
Yes.
We don't write the same in other languages, and it applies to French. So it's been very interesting to compare the two and use that as I write.
Yeah, that's very cool. I like that. I think it. I mean, I don't know a lot about French literature, but definitely there's a feel to it that's different to me when I was
Yeah.
reading your story. Okay, I want to know what's next. I mean, this was great.
Oh.
Is there? There's not more in this series, is there? It's not a series. Maybe.
Maybe,
Okay.
maybe. So
I would love to.
it
Oh,
was,
I
yeah,
Millie. Oh, I think you should. The characters are so wonderful. I
yes.
hope that you do. And
So yeah, it was written as a standalone, but I
yeah.
do have ideas for a sequel. I even have a working title, so it would be A Promise of Flesh and Skin.
Okay.
To continue
Oh,
with
I
the first book. I've already written an outline. I've already shared it with my agents. Now I need to write a few chapters and send them to my publisher, see if they are interested in acquiring it. I have a lot on my plate, so I don't know when I'm gonna
yes.
do that. I will
Yeah.
probably
Because
start working on it next
you have a
year. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
You've got a full-time job, I assume.
I have a full-time job, yes. Plus, I have two books already scheduled to come next year. They
Oh,
are
good.
also keeping me busy. So I have a novella called The Seventh Sister, which is a retelling of Snow White and Bluebird. Bluebird, I always pronounce that right. So it's a blend of them. It's a horror fantasy. So that's a short book
Hmm.
coming out next year. But the big thing is The Color of Time, which is my second novel. It's going to be a short novel, more like on the 50,000 words, not as long as Legacy, but still a novel, which is uh, also a retelling of Donkey Skein, another fairy tale, which I know not a lot of people are familiar with,
No, no.
unless you are a fairy tale nerd. Donkey Skin
Okay.
is a tale by Charles Perrault. I invite you to check it out. He was the first one, I believe, to write have a written version of it.
Hmm.
And it's a fairy tale in space. So it's a retelling, but in a
Okay.
sci-fi setting. And I'm deep into developmental edits right now for it. So yeah, I have
Okay.
those two books coming
You've
next
got a
year.
lot.
A lot, but once I'm done with edits, I hope I can start working on the sequel to Legacy. Oh wait, I have finished a draft for another novella, a sci-fi novella called Night Bloom. So I have to finish working on it first with my agents. So it's
You're
already written. So now I'm in the phase of like getting beta reader feedback, and then my
okay.
agent will also, I'm sure, send me some feedback. And once this piece is ready and go on submission, and I'm done with the all the edits for the two books coming next year, which I think I'm getting close to the end. Then I can work on the sequel for
Yeah.
Legacy. So
Okay.
I
All right.
have a
All right. Well,
very full plate.
I'll
I'm
have to
very
be
busy.
patient. So,
Yes.
Millie, I'm assuming people can go to your website and sign up for your newsletter, your author
Yes.
newsletter, or your email list, so they can
Yes.
keep up with you on all your upcoming publications. And
Yes.
I will be sure and put your information in the box below the video here, so people can easily click and go to your website. We're going to have to close out here in just a minute or two. Is there any last things you'd like to say, or tell us?
Oh, I don't
Wow,
know.
you're busy. You're a busy woman. I can see that.
Yes, I would say one thing is if, like me, you like to read across all the different speculative genre and not only fantasy. Thought fantasy, I think, is still my number one. I write a lot of fantasy. But if you like different types of stories, historical fantasy, urban fantasy, high fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian, speculative, mystery, weird blends, especially that, like fairy tales and space, I'm your gal. I love to
I
write
love it.
blends of genres, put them together and create something unique. So yes, if you like blends of genres, check my books, check Legacy of Blood and Bone, or check any other book that I have. I think they have at least two genres blended, like all of
Yeah,
them.
great. I just think it's brilliant. I love it. I'm looking forward, especially to the blend with the fantasy science fiction. I really enjoy that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So, okay, we are out of time, Millie. It's been so great talking with you. I love the book. I hope people will pick up a copy and enjoy this great story, and
thank
also
you
check
so
out some
much,
of your
Janet.
other work. Uh, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I wish you luck this coming year. And I hope I will see you at Baycon next
Yes,
July.
I already
Okay,
registered. I'll see you there.
excellent, excellent. I'll be picking up some of your books there. Okay.
Thank you so much, Janet, for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, Millie. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Bye.
Bye.